Tonight we just kind of want to touch base on where we're going to be moving towards here in 2026. And we got a lot of interesting things taking place here, not just in our state, but around other states as well. And so we're going to be working with different groups in different states. And so this next year, this year here, we're going to be opening up our Zoom calls to people in different states that want to participate. And so we should have a lot more information being brought forth, not just in South Carolina, but around the country. And I think that'll be a positive thing for all of us to be able to look at and hear what's taking place, around the United States of America, so to speak. And so tonight, I just wanted to touch base on the aspect of where we're at, what we're doing, the military moves that are going on, the global security aspect, dealing with the Monroe Doctrine, as well as the financial system and the challenges that we have as we move away from the Federal Reserve and the fiat currencies. And so tonight, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play a few videos here that give a lot of information out and they confirm basically everything that we've been talking about. So let me go ahead and get this set up for a share here and we'll look at it from this standpoint. Okay, screens. And so I'm going to go ahead and kick this on here and hopefully y'all can see it.
Let's remember where Venezuela is. It borders the Caribbean. What else is in the Caribbean? The origin point for the infamous system of offshore banking established directly by the British. Back in 1960, the largest banking houses in London, working in partnership with the government and the Exchequer, established 14 completely secrecy jurisdictions. These are the offshore banking centers that now hold between $50 and $75 trillion, with all 50 of the world's largest banks operating within them. These offshore centers exist outside the control of sovereign governments. They're secret, they're unregulated, and they facilitate illegal activity. What we once had, a legitimate regulated banking system, has been transformed into a criminal enterprise. And interestingly, the Russians have known this for years and have been more vociferous about it than any Western government. In a 2014 speech, Viktor Ivanov, then Russia's top drug enforcement official, laid it out clearly in a Moscow conference. Now, this is a good time to remember that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently commented that 50% of his job involves issues of national security. Now think about it. Since we started targeting drug boats and lighting up the communications channels of the cartels and their financiers, I bet Treasury Secretary Bessent has been just as busy as Pete Hegseth. Now, Venezuela doesn't have to be a major producer of drugs. It's the facilitator for the spider web of narcotics, illegal immigration, and terrorism. And it's well known that Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard operate out of Venezuela. So think about the implications. Trump's moves on Venezuela hits at this nexus, and it effectively attacks the liquidity of the offshore banking system established by the British in the 1960s. He's cutting off the flow of fertilizer to the globalist oligarchs. And this brings us to the real issue, which is the fact that we are fighting not regular warfare, but irregular warfare. For decades, the British Empire and globalist banks have waged war on us using non-state actors, NGOs, terrorists, cartels, all of which are protected by their rules-based international order. A couple of my friends discussed this when they summed up their discussion on Venezuela. Here's what Crypto Rich and Tom Luongo said.
So here's Trump coming along, breaking the rules, which he has to do in order to defeat the international banking cartel, which is spawned out of the city of London.
Well, you can't play by their rules when their rules.
Okay, so that kind of gives us a little bit of a heads up on that section. I'm going to continue. There's a couple more here that we do, and so I just want to continue on with this information. And so I'm going to go ahead and share the next one.
So here's Trump coming along, breaking the rules, which he has to do in order to defeat the international banking cartel, which is spawned out of the City of London.
Well, you can't play by their rules when their rules-based order is all based on
It favors them.
and it favors them. They set the game board up. If you want to beat somebody, you can't play the game by their rules. It's basic Sun Tzu. Never fight on ground prepared by your enemy.
Tom's right. You can't defend your nation if you play by their rules. And the new national security strategy, which Rubio brought up in the above interview, says so. Just a reminder, here's what the national security strategy says about the elite's rules. They lashed American policy to a network of international institutions, some of which were driven by outright anti-Americanism and many by a transnationalism that explicitly seeks to dissolve individual state sovereignty. So on behalf of all sovereign nations, Trump has taken the fight directly to those institutions, both the so-called legitimate ones like USAID, the NGOs, the nonprofits, the universities, and the illegitimate side, the cartels, the criminal empires, and their financiers. We're no longer playing by the rules of the rules-based order. And don't forget, it was Canada's Mark Carney who said that just a few months ago. The old world of steady expansion of rules-based liberalized trade and investment, that world is gone. This is what this administration is taking on in their whole of government approach. No, it isn't regime change. It's the recognition that this is irregular warfare. And for the first time in the entire post-war period, the United States is actually fighting back. So here's the bottom line. While the talking heads and influencers are screaming about regime change and splitting MAGA, Donald Trump just declared war on the financial backbone of the British Empire. He's targeting the offshore banking system that has funded terrorism, cartels, and the destruction of sovereign nations for over 50 years. And he's just targeted Canada for good measure. The most ironic part? The enemy understands what Trump is doing better than many of his supposed allies. Sir John Sawers and John Bolton see it. And one of the other superpowers, Russia, has been warning about this for decades. But too many in the MAGA movement are stuck arguing about whether this is another neocon regime change, instead of recognizing that Trump has just launched the biggest offensive against the City of London since maybe the American Revolution. This is why we exist. Promethean action has been in this fight since the 1970s. We've exposed the offshore banking apparatus. We've been warning.
All right, people, we have one more there to go and then we'll continue. So hopefully you're getting all this information and taking it in and being able to understand what it is, and we'll go over that here shortly.
Free newsletter. Now, here's what Trump is really going after. If this is a war on drug trafficking organizations and oligarchs, as Rubio says, then it is automatically a war on the global banking system because you can't separate the two. The target isn't just jungle labs and drug boats. It's the City of London. Let's remember where Venezuela is. It borders the Caribbean. What else is in the Caribbean? The origin point for the infamous system of offshore banking established directly by the British. Back in 1960, the largest banking houses in London, working in partnership with the government and the Exchequer, established 14 completely secrecy jurisdictions. These are the offshore banking centers that now hold between $50 and $75 trillion, with all 50 of the world's largest banks operating within them. These offshore centers exist outside the control of sovereign governments. They're secret, they're unregulated, and they facilitate illegal activity. What we once had, a legitimate regulated banking system, has been transformed into a criminal enterprise. And interestingly, the Russians have known this for years and have been more vociferous about it than any Western government. In a 2014 speech, Viktor Ivanov, then Russia's top drug enforcement official, laid it out clearly in a Moscow conference. He said, "This allows us to confidently assert that narco money is the foundation of the modern financial system. It is not surprising that during the first peak of the financial crisis of 2008-2009, Antonio Costa from the UN announced that the top banks in the world dumped in around $352 billion of narco dollars to use for interbank borrowing to address the critical shortage of liquidity. And he goes on to make clear that the global financial system needs drug money to survive. The very existence of the global financial bubble, he said, is based on precisely this opportunity for banks to attract liquid narco money. In fact, this garbage fertilizes the present economic system. Now, this is a good time to remember that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently commented that 50% of his job involves issues of national security. Now think about it. Since we started targeting drug boats and lighting up the communications channels of the cartels and their financiers, I bet Treasury Secretary Bessent has been just as busy as Pete Hegseth. Now, Venezuela doesn't have to be a major producer of drugs. It's the facilitator for the spider web of narcotics, illegal immigration, and terrorism. And it's well known that Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard operate out of Venezuela. So think about the implications. Trump's moves on Venezuela hits at this nexus, and it effectively attacks the liquidity of the offshore banking system established by the British in the 1960s. He's cutting off the flow of fertilizer to the globalist oligarchs.
So, if any of you have any comments or any questions upon what we just showed, feel free to unmute and go ahead and ask those at this time. Okay. The war that we're at is strictly always about the money, people. It's always been about the money. It doesn't matter what country, what war was taking place. Let it be the Revolutionary War, let it be World War I, World War II, Korean Wars, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, the Iranian, doesn't matter. Everything has to do with the financial crisis that has taken place here around the globe, so to speak. And so I want to just kind of read a definition here of actually what the Monroe Doctrine means. Okay, the Monroe Doctrine, I'm just going to kind of synopsis and then I'm going to read the definition. The Monroe Doctrine is a protection of our country, known as America, okay, to protect the Western Hemisphere from the intrusion of the British rule, basically is what it is. Okay, all the other countries that are outside the Western Hemisphere are involved in a lot of this trafficking of finances, dealing with drug money, dealing with child trafficking, dealing with all this nefarious aspects that we see. Most people don't recognize the Monroe Doctrine because most people have never even heard about it because it was kind of silent for so many years. And when we first started teaching back in the late 70s and 80s and 90s, the Monroe Doctrine was something that we knew was very important. But at the time, there was not any president or any vice president or anybody in politics that actually had the backbone to bring that Monroe Doctrine forward to protect our country. And I think the reason why was because most everybody was under the control of the globalist elite. Again, we have to take this into consideration, okay? The City of London, the Vatican, and the District of Columbia, okay? Those three areas basically have always been connected to the City of London, okay? So we have to be able to recognize what's taking place. And so I'm just going to go ahead and set this down here. I'm just going to read this. I'm just going to turn my video off here real quick, but I'm going to continue reading, okay? We're going to talk about the Monroe Doctrine. According to definition, a policy adopted by the United States according to which this government will consider any attempt on the part of a European power to colonize or to extend its system of government to. I'm just going to stop right there, okay? The Americas and the people that came to the Americas left that area of European colonization because it was taking control over everything within their life. It didn't give them any ability to do things. So I'm going to continue. Or to extend its system of government to any part of the Western Hemisphere as an act of unfriendliness to the United States. The policy was foreshadowed by Jefferson in 1793 and again in 1801, when the United States expressed to Great Britain its willingness that the Floridas should remain in the hands of Spain, but its unwillingness that they should be transferred to any other power. The doctrine was definitely stated in a message of President Monroe to Congress on December 2nd, 1823, in which he says, "The American continents, by the free and independent condition which they have assumed and maintained, are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European powers. We owe it, therefore, to candor and to make relations existing between the United States and those powers to declare that we should consider any attempt on their part to extend their system to any portion of this hemisphere as dangerous to our peace and safety." Now think about this. Think of what Trump's doing, okay? He's taking control of Venezuela. He's stopping the funding going back to Britain. Britain is the aspect of colonization, okay? Now, with the existing colonies of dependencies in any European power, we have not interfered and shall not interfere. But with the governments who have declared their independence and maintained it, and whose independence we have on great consideration and on just principles, acknowledge we could not view any interposition for the purpose of oppressing them or controlling in any other manner their destiny by any European power in any other light than as the manifestation of an unfriendly disposition toward the United States. In another part of this message, it is declared that the American continents, by the free and independent condition which they have assumed and maintained, are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European powers. This doctrine is now the settled policy of the United States, and while it has not been formally recognized by foreign powers, it has, for the most part, been generally acquiesced in. And again, acquiesced means if they haven't rebutted it, then it stands as truth. The policy with respect to the colonization of America by European powers was occasioned by discussions with Russia as to territorial rights on the northwest coast of America. Existing colonies of Great Britain and other countries were not, of course, affected by this declaration. So again, we're not trying to take over the world. We are trying to protect this Western Hemisphere from the interference of Britain and other parts of that area. In 1848, President Polk stated that a transfer of sovereignty of the Yucatan to either Spain or Great Britain or any other power could not be consented to by the United States. The same principle was reasserted in 1888 when there were rumors that Haiti might become within the aspect of France and that the French government might take charge of the work of digging the Panama Canal. So again, when we look at the colonization of Great Britain and some of these other areas within that area, they were trying to control not only the export, but as well as the import through the financial backings within their country in a form of financial colonization. Okay. The island of Cuba was for a long time subject for the application of the Monroe Doctrine. As early as 1825, the United States felt that any change in the sovereignty of that island would be detrimental to its interest. Again, in 1848, the position was taken with regard to a possible control by Great Britain over the island. So again, even though we went to war, the Revolutionary War, and we thought we won, Great Britain continued to be in control and continued to try to colonize the Western Hemisphere. During the American Civil War, the Emperor of France attempted to establish Prince Maximilian of Australia upon the throne of Mexico. The United States protested, and at the end of the war brought pressure to bear upon France to withdraw their troops, which were in Mexico, in support of Maximilian. A boundary dispute between Great Britain and Venezuela gave occasion to President Cleveland to apply the Monroe Doctrine in a very positive way. So again, Trump is not the only person that has utilized this. It was utilized in the beginning of our country, okay, when we still maintained sovereignty, okay, as it appeared that the Great Britain would be likely to press her claim by force. And so what's taken place over these years is Great Britain, through the City of London, through the Vatican, and through the District of Columbia, that's where they have utilized this force, okay? The United States recommended arbitration between the two countries and then undertook it itself to appoint a commission to determine what seemed to be joint boundaries. Finally, a commission of arbitration was appointed under treaty. Great Britain and Venezuela, which rendered an award on October 3rd of 1899. In his annual message of December 3rd, 1903, President Roosevelt said distinctly, "We do not guarantee any state against punishment if its misconduct itself, provided that the punishment does not take the form of an acquisition of territory by any non-American power." Now, I want you to think about what I just read, okay? I'm going to say it one more time. We do not guarantee any state against punishment if its misconduct itself provides that punishment does not take the form of acquisition of territory by any non-American power. So when you look at the immigration that has taken place today, okay, Somalia, Afghanistan, all these different forms of immigration into our country, okay, those are all non-American powers, okay, and they are acquiescing, okay, they're acquiring the territory and trying to dictate to the American public as well as the American politicians that they have to listen to them, okay? That is an act of war, okay? Now, in 1899, the American delegate at the peace conference at The Hague, and again, The Hague is where it's like a world committee of where all the governments come, and The Hague only utilizes the Constitution of every country. Okay, so let's say you have a claim that your constitutional principles are being violated by another country, it goes to The Hague, and The Hague slaps them down basically and says, hey, you can't interfere with this Constitution. That's what they are set up on, okay? So remember, our Constitution is like unlike any other type of a constitution in and around the other areas of foreign powers. Okay, The Hague made with reference to the convention providing for the new court of arbitration following declaration. Nothing contained in this convention shall be construed as to require the United States of America. Okay, and so far we've just listened to me stating the United States. Okay, remember, the United States is a corporation. Okay, it's the incorporated structure of government. Now it's it's referencing the sovereignty of our country, the United States of America. Okay, to depart from its traditional policy and not intruding upon, interfering with, or entangling itself in the political questions of policy, internal administration. Okay, remember, administration is the incorporated structure of any foreign state. Okay, remember, the commercial status of every city, county, and state is a foreign state. Okay, nor shall anything contained in the said convention be construed to imply or and relinquish by the United States of America its traditional attitude toward purely American questions. Okay? American questions only refer to our Western Hemisphere. Okay? So if we have a question of what's taken place in our Western Hemisphere, we have the ability through the Monroe Doctrine to not only question it, but also to correct it to protect the United States of America's sovereignty. The convention was signed under a reservation in accordance with this declaration. Okay, now, while the United States exercises a sort of wardship over the New World, it recognizes that circumstances may occur in which a foreign power may lawfully exact reparation from an American state. And so long as the reparation does not take the form of territorial occupation, the United States will not interfere. Okay? An international nuisance must be abated, and if European powers are not to be allowed to do so in the case of an American state, the United States must do so. In other words, no foreign powers, commercially, foreign powers from other countries, have the ability to come into our country and switch the policies, the beliefs, and the securities of our country. In case of the American state, the United States must do so. This may lead to a form of intervention. Okay, so what is Trump doing right now in Minneapolis? What is Trump doing in California? What is Trump going to be doing in Washington and Oregon? And within these areas of cities that have claimed that they can go ahead and violate the Constitution through immigration, through whatever aspect, okay? This may lead to a form of intervention, and in the case of San Domingo in 1904, 1905, when an American receiver general was appointed to collect the Dominican customs to order to ensure the payment of foreign creditors, it, by an extension of the Monroe Doctrine, that the United States justifies its qualified intervention in the domestic affairs of Mexico. If foreign powers are not to be allowed to see the protection of their citizens and their citizens' property, then the United States must itself undertake that duty. So think about that last sentence. The United States must take over that duty. Okay. Well, that's what Trump's doing in Venezuela. Okay. He's taking over the duty to maintain the integrity of Venezuela and the integrity of the Western Hemisphere. Okay. And so that's very important to recognize within that aspect of the Monroe Doctrine, because it really stabilizes the Western Hemisphere, not only within the aspect of security, but in the aspect of financial. Okay. So Venezuela, okay, would be another good, probably good foreign currency for people to purchase. I'm just saying, okay, as it evolves and their currency gets reestablished with a lot of backing now. Okay, so think about that. Again, everything deals with economics. It doesn't matter if it's, in a small form of economics, doesn't matter if it's in crypto economics, it doesn't matter if it's hard gold or hard silver. Everything right now is dealing with the form of economics. Our country is going through the biggest battle that we've ever seen, not on the playing field as like some of the previous videos I shared, but a battle of economic stability to maintain control over the Western Hemisphere, to protect not just the United States of America, but to protect all of the Americas. And that's something very few people even take into consideration. When we hear MAGA being in contrast to one another, splitting it up, and people think, oh my gosh, this is what's going on. And we're getting the same thing from like Bush and all these other people who are previous presidents. They don't understand what's taking place. And what's actually taking place is a complete reset of sovereignty through the economic conditions that are being put in place by President Trump and those around him. So it's very important to recognize that since 1933, our country and around the globe, so to speak, through the Federal Reserve and the central banking system and the City of London and the Vatican and the District of Columbia have all utilized this credit debit system, okay, in a nefarious way to control not just the men and women, sons and daughters of our country, but of all other countries. And that's something that we have to take into consideration as we move forward this year. I mean, we're only talking 8 days, people. 8 days since, January 1. I mean, we're looking at some things that are taking place fast. Am I excited? I'm very excited. Am I concerned? Not really, because I can see what's taking place where many others can't. And so tonight, that's why I wanted to touch base with everybody and just kind of, let you know where we're going within our situation within the Ninth Amendment Party. Again, we're going to be taking it again across the states. We're going to be working with the people that I've always worked with for many, many years and start bringing in some new areas of chapters and memberships and things of this nature. And right now we're in the process of looking at establishing, not just the headquarters for the Ninth Amendment Party, but, we're looking at different areas where we want to be able to establish that area. And so that's something new that we're going to be doing. And so it's going to be a private membership association. There's going to be some things that we're going to be talking about here down the road as we move forward and get everything put in place for that membership and different things that we'll be able to utilize. Another good thing that we have the ability to, I finalized the ability for each and every one of you to be able to have a private membership association that is based out of the state of Idaho. And we have a individual there who will actually take care of the registered agent as well as your primary office space, so to speak, okay? And you can utilize that within your trust that we're establishing. And so you'll be able to, go ahead and move into some new areas of prevention of financial burdens that are placed upon the living man and woman due to the fact that you will be a unincorporated nonprofit association. And so that's what we're working on right now. Cost-wise for that, we most people that are looking at registered agents are spending a lot of money. Okay. And so my goal is to get it down to a price where it's annually And right now we're at the area of I feel pretty confident to say right now that if a person wants to do that, a man or woman, excuse my language on the person, no, we're not supposed to use that. But if you're looking to do your own private membership association and take advantage of some of the unincorporated nonprofit association characteristics, uh, a registered agent is going to cost about $100 annually. Okay. Which is a great price. I mean, you look around the country and registered agents are a lot more than $100. And basically, what a registered agent does is if somebody has a question about your private membership association, they mail them the letter, and then all he does is he takes that letter, he doesn't open it, puts it into a new envelope, and sends it to you directly. And so you're basically staying out of the aspect of the public view, which is really important as a private membership association that you can utilize within your trust. Okay. So that's what we're doing. We're expanding. We've talked about it. We've taken care of all the articles and membership information, and we did that way back when. And Spirit here, through our prayer here that we went through here through the last part of December into January, said now's the time to actually bring all this forward and make it where every state can utilize not only the information, but also can create their own areas under the Ninth Amendment party as an umbrella. And so we would be just basically an umbrella. And every county would have that ability to open up their own, run it the way they'd like, do whatever they want, okay, within the perimeters of what the Ninth Amendment party has established. And it's very simple, okay? The purpose of the Ninth Amendment party is to maintain the religious aspects that God created us and not government, and not to have a contractional all capital name forced upon us to place us into servitude. Okay. And that's more or less what it is. I mean, everything's written and it's a lot longer, just so you guys know on the paperwork. Okay. But that's just a synopsis. And so that's what we're looking to do. And so those of you who are in your county, you would have the opportunity to create your own association under the Ninth Amendment party and run it the way you guys feel, because every county is going to be different, and everybody's going to have different ideas for their county. Everybody's going to have a different platform that is, important to how they view their county. And again, it's like the educational system, okay? We have to correct things according to where we live. And just like, in Walterboro, they're trying to correct that aspect of the data centers coming in, all these different areas and aspects. And this is something that I think can bring not only the people together through the aspect of Constitution, but also the aspect of having standing to actually defend the Constitution. And I think that's the hardest part that we have to look at. One of the things that I was doing today, off and on, is I pick up the book that I bought here a while back dealing with South Carolina. Okay. The state that forgot, South Carolina's surrender to democracy. Okay. And I read a little bit of it every day, and sometimes I don't, just depending on what I got going on. I mean, we had a lot happening here this last couple of weeks, and dealing with Carla's mom and our loss of my in-law and stuff like that, and which was a real big toll on us. As I'm sure, if all of you have gone through loss like that as well, what we went through. And so one of the things that I thought was very interesting here in South Carolina, okay, is the fact that when we look at the Constitutional Convention and we look at the aspect of democracy, okay, it was 68,000, okay, blacks that had voted to bring in democracy into the state of South Carolina. Okay. And that's something most people are unaware of. And I'm not, trying to pick on any culture. I'm just saying that's what took place. And along them was 130 white people. Okay. And that's what they utilized to take control over South Carolina. And so when we look at the Democratic Party in South Carolina, it's been here a long time, people. And like here in Hampton County, most of everybody that's in any kind of political aspect or even at the courthouse are all Democrats. Okay. So we're looking at a form of political discrimination in these counties. Okay. Might be the same in your county. I don't know. However, there are other areas that I looked up, and I'm just going to kind of touch base with you on some of the things that I've found. I've been doing a lot of research and reading here, dealing with the aspect of how we can move forward in some of these areas of recognition. And there's a lot of paperwork out there and handbooks, PDFs, and things of this nature, okay? But most people are unaware that you can actually change through the way the counties are structured, the county form of government. You can actually place a petition in the county prior to the vote. And if you have enough signatures to get it on the ballot, you can change your county from democracy back to a republic form of government where property rights are reestablished. Okay. And that's through the county handbook. And so, Hemp, if you have questions on something like that, that's another good form of a venue to utilize. And it was a whole lot different time, period. Okay. And again, when we look at Democrats, okay, and I would go back probably to about the John F. Kennedy era, okay? The Democrats and Republicans still had a lot of similarities, okay? After that time frame, the Democratic Party really changed dramatically. And again, it was due to the influx and control of the financial aspect through the City of London and other areas of the District of Columbia. Okay. And so again, this is just history. I just want people to recognize, the history. I'm not, picking a side or saying one's right or one's wrong. I'm just saying this is the history of the state of South Carolina. To correct our state, just like all the other states, are going to have to go through a true determination of what form of government they choose. Okay. Under the county aspect, as well as the ability to pick what form of government you operate under, is huge. Okay. And our next video that we'll do, we're gonna run videos about every 2 weeks, people, because again, we're going through a lot of stuff within our situation here. Just getting everything ready on a national level. And so I got to, stay focused and be able to, get everything in line so that way we can get things moving as fast as we can with some of the different people in the different states that we're going to be working with. And also at the same time, we're going to be looking at some areas of billboards and different things of this nature just to kind of help educate the general population on really what's going on. And so a lot of you have seen the pic that I have that shows on the left-hand side the sovereignty aspect, the peace flag. On the right-hand side is the commercial side, has all the U.S. codes dealing with person, entities, vessels, all the commercial structure of the government. We're looking to, put some of these different types of education that people can look at pretty fast and grasp it. And so that's one of the things we're looking to do. And so just kind of keep your eyes open. If you see a good billboard that might have a lot of, people traveling by it, and hopefully maybe next to a stop sign or something of that nature within your community, jot it down. Because again, this is going to be a year of a lot of challenges because again, we're going to be going through huge financial situations, across the board, economic wise as we move forward. And so, I really see Trump working a deal out with Greenland to have that done, I would think here probably within the next 2 months. It could be done even tomorrow. I know they've changed a lot of their energies and attitude, and Denmark's not real happy about it, but really, who cares? I mean, they're part of the problem with London, the city of London, I mean, they're all, that area of, the British rule, okay? So we got to take that into consideration. Okay. So I really think we're going to have, Greenland within the next 2 months. I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, hey, that's okay. But I think the way things are moving, I think the speed and timing of everything will happen. Another thing that I think that is going to be taking place within that time frame is, you know, we're looking at and hearing a lot dealing with the financial system of, the QFS, the quantum financial system. Okay. And so I think we're getting a lot closer to that. Uh, I think hopefully between now and July 4th of this year, I think we're going to see some major changes. Okay. And when I say major changes, I'm not just talking about our country, I'm talking about, a change in Mexico, a change in Colombia, South America, Central America. All these things are going to have to take place here within this year. And so it's a matter of how fast and how strong our president utilizes, peace through strength. And that's where we're at. And so, again, I appreciate y'all coming in tonight and taking the time to listen and at least, you know, have a different perspective, hopefully. Again, we're, looking at things from a different standpoint. And again, I'm wearing my shirt. If you don't like Trump, then you probably, won't like me. And I'm okay with it. Okay. So I'm just saying. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions before we call it a night. And again, I appreciate the comments there, Paula, clarifying on the Monroe Doctrine. It's important. People, the Monroe Doctrine is like, it's like the biggest security unit around your home, and it's just massive when you really understand why it was put in place. Okay. And as an American Indian, okay, we know what colonization does. Okay. We were the first socialist program put here on our area of Americas. Okay. Now the colonization is being brought forth through the economic system. And that's where we can't let that happen. And so, I'm glad that everything is moving in the right direction. I'm glad everything is moving into a point where each and every one of us will have the ability to recognize truly what's going on. Okay. And I'll probably post this here just so everybody knows. I'm probably going to post this one here once I get everything done, recorded and so forth, and get it posted. And I'll have it up on on our Rumble channel as well as our YouTube channel, so you can share this. Okay, I mean, again, it doesn't do us any good to stay in a box. Okay. And I've been in a box for a while because I had to be protective and I had to look after, a lot of things. And after, our sabbatical, so to speak, in prayer and just, letting, spirit, letting God guide me, as well as, recognizing what really we have the capability of bringing forth, and allowing the communities themselves to utilize the information that best suits their community. And that's something that I've been not necessarily struggling with, but I've been putting it off. And Spirit's like, no more putting it off. Okay. So anyway, appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead. Like I said, I'll open it up. Bonnie, do you have any questions? If so, unmute.
No, I don't think so. But I'm gonna go back and listen to the whole thing.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Bonnie. Bobby, do you have any questions? Okay. I guess Bobby's good. Amp, do you have any questions?
Not at this moment, but I got to do like Miss Bonnie. I got to listen to it about 2 more times.
Okay. I can relate.
And
There's a lot of
I
it.
get back with you.
Okay. That sounds good, Amp.
Thank you, BT. Thank you.
All right. You're well. Thanks for coming in tonight. I appreciate it. All right, people, like another night, another great time. Godspeed, God bless, and God bless America. And we're out.